My name is Evelyn and I am 23 years old. I never thought I'd be sitting here questioning my entire relationship. But here I am, I'm 26 years old, and my boyfriend, who's 29, moved in with me much faster than I ever imagined. To be honest, at the beginning it felt exciting, almost like something out of a movie. You know, the honeymoon stage, when everything feels perfect, and you can't get enough of each other. That's exactly how it felt. We had been dating for a little while, and every day together seemed so natural. So when he brought up the idea of moving in, I didn't hesitate. I thought, why not? We love each other, and this feels right. I imagined us cooking dinner together after work, spending lazy Sundays watching movies, and building this little life that would only grow stronger with time. When he finally brought his things over, I remember the excitement, his clothes in my closet, his toothbrush next to mine. It felt like the start of something permanent. Friends and family even said we looked like the perfect couple, and I believed it. I thought living together would only prove how strong our relationship was. But what I didn't realize was that moving in so fast meant I skipped over all the little tests that usually show you who a person really is. The quirks, the habits, the way they handle stress or responsibility. Those things don't show up on the first few dates, but they become crystal clear when you share a home. Looking back now, maybe I ignored the little red flags because I wanted it to work so badly. I wanted the fairy tale, and I convinced myself that love was enough to make everything fall into place. But the truth is, once the honeymoon glow faded, reality started creeping in. And with reality came doubts I never expected to face. At first, everything felt right, so right that I actually thought I had it all figured out. We were in love, we laughed about silly things, we cooked meals together, and every night ended with us curled up on the couch. In those early days, I told myself, this is what a grown-up relationship is supposed to look like. It felt like I had finally stepped into the chapter of life I had always dreamed about. When he moved in, I was buzzing with excitement. We set up the apartment together, deciding where his things would go, hanging up decorations, even shopping for little household items like dishes and towels. I didn't mind making room in my life and in my space, because to me, it meant we were building something real. For a while, it truly felt like we were on the same team, carving out a future side by side. But the excitement didn't last long. Once the boxes were unpacked and the novelty of playing house wore off, things started to feel different. I noticed little cracks in the picture-perfect life I thought we were creating. The laughter became less frequent, the conversations felt shorter, and instead of helping me with small chores, he seemed more interested in doing his own thing. It was as if the moment comfort and routine set in, his efforts started to fade. All the energy he put into making me feel special before planning dates, helping out, even just showing appreciation seemed to disappear. Suddenly, I felt like I was the one doing everything to keep this spark alive, while he just settled into the comfort of having me take care of things. That was when the glow of our new life together started to dim. The fairy tale I imagined was slowly being replaced by reality, and I couldn't help but wonder if I had rushed into something that was only exciting on the surface, but not built to last. Not long after he moved in, he made a choice that flipped my entire world upside down. He quit his job just like that. No warning, no deep conversation about what it would mean for us. No planning, he simply walked away from it. At first, I honestly thought I had misheard him. I remember standing in the kitchen, holding a coffee mug, and asking, wait, what? Do you mean you quit? He said it so casually, as if it was no big deal, like leaving a job without a safety net was the most normal thing in the world. And here's the part that really shook me. He didn't have another job lined up, not even an interview waiting. He didn't even have savings to cover him for a month. He just quit, no strategy, no backup plan, nothing. That moment was the first time I felt real panic about our relationship. Up until then, I believed we were building a future together. But suddenly, it felt like I was the only one who cared about responsibility. I couldn't stop thinking, what kind of person quits their job when they just moved in with their partner? It wasn't just about money though. Of course, money mattered. It was about what it said about his mindset to me. It screamed recklessness. It showed me he wasn't thinking about us at all. He wasn't worried about how rent would get paid or how groceries would be bought. He assumed, without asking, that I would carry the weight for both of us. That realization cut deep. Because when someone makes a decision that huge without even including you in the conversation, it shows you exactly where you stand in their priorities. And in that moment, it became painfully clear. I was not standing beside him as a true partner. I was standing behind him, expected to clean up the mess. From that moment on, everything fell onto me. Suddenly, I was the one carrying the rent, the groceries, the utilities, every single expense that kept our lives running. And at first, I tried to be understanding. I told myself it was temporary. I convinced myself that he just needed a little bit of time to figure things out, to regroup, to find a new job. But as the days turned into weeks, that optimism started to fade. Every time I swiped my card at the grocery store or watched the rent clear from my bank account, a knot formed in my stomach. I was working hard to keep us afloat, while he spent his days acting as if nothing had changed. I wanted to believe in him. I wanted to believe that he was the man I thought he was when he first moved in. But deep down, I felt uneasy. It was more than just money. It was the fact that he didn't seem worried at all. If I were in his position, I'd be panicked, stressed, desperate to fix things. But he seemed perfectly comfortable letting me shoulder everything. That's when a voice inside me started whispering, quiet at first, but growing louder every day, that something was very wrong. This wasn't the partnership I had signed up for. This wasn't love balancing responsibility. This was me being used. Whether he realized it or not, I would come home exhausted from work, only to see him relaxed on the couch, playing video games, with no sign of guilt on his face. And while he might have thought everything was fine, inside, I felt the weight of resentment building heavier and heavier. Carrying the financial burden was hard enough, but carrying the emotional burden of knowing I couldn't rely on my new partner, that was even harder. Instead of hustling to find a new job, he slipped into a routine that left me stunned and honestly disappointed. In my mind, losing a job or quitting one should light a fire under you. It should push you to wake up early, send out applications, update your resume, and do everything possible to get back on your feet. But with him, it was the complete opposite. He would wake up late, sometimes not even until mid-morning, and then casually scroll through his phone. Eventually, he'd apply for one job, just one, and then declare his job search done for the day. That was it. No urgency, no long hours of searching, no determination to fix the situation he had put us in. The rest of his day, completely devoted to his video games. He would sit in front of the TV or computer, controller in hand, eyes glued to the screen, completely checked out from reality. Meanwhile, I was at work, breaking my back trying to cover rent, bills, groceries, everything. I'd come home after a stressful day, exhausted and drained, only to see him exactly where I had left him that morning, sitting on the couch, gaming. The dishes would be in the sink, the laundry untouched, and the atmosphere in the apartment heavy with frustration. What hurt most wasn't just that he was gaming, it was the fact that he wasn't worried. He didn't seem to care that I was carrying the entire load on my own. It was like he had settled into this comfort zone where I worked, and he played. And the truth is, every time I walked past him in that living room, watching the glow of the screen reflect on his face, I felt more and more alone. The man I thought would be my partner in life was turning into someone who acted more like a child than a grown man. And I couldn't shake the sinking feeling that maybe this was who he really was. Day after day, nothing changed. I would wake up early, rushing to get ready for work, already stressed about how I was going to balance the bills, rent, and daily expenses. Meanwhile, he stayed behind in the apartment, falling into the exact same pattern I had seen the day before. While I was out in the real world grinding to keep our lives together, he was at home, locked into his fantasy world. Hours and hours slipped away as he sat in front of the screen, controller in hand, completely immersed in video games. It wasn't a what I'm thing, or even a bad week. It was becoming his lifestyle. At first, I thought maybe he was just coping. Losing a job is stressful, and maybe gaming was his way of distracting himself. I tried to be understanding. But the more time passed, the clearer it became. This wasn't coping, this was comfort. He wasn't worried about how the rent would get paid or how we'd afford groceries. He wasn't losing sleep over the bills piling up. I was. He, on the other hand, seemed perfectly fine letting me carry everything while he sat in a world that didn't demand anything from him. It wasn't just about the money anymore. Money can always be earned, but what truly broke me was the lack of effort, the lack of drive, the lack of urgency to show that he cared about us. Every time I saw him, relaxed and unbothered, it made me feel more invisible. My stress, my sacrifices, they didn't seem to matter to him. And in those long hours, watching him waste his days while I wore myself thin, I started asking questions I never thought I'd ask. Was I with someone who wanted a partner or someone who just wanted a safety net? Whenever I brought it up, he always had the same reaction. Promises. He would look me right in the eyes, sometimes even holding my hand, and tell me he understood. He'd say things like, "You're right, I'll try harder. I'll start applying to more places. I don't want you to feel like you're carrying this alone." And in those moments, I wanted to believe him so badly. And for maybe a day, I did, for a brief time. His words matched his actions. I'd come home and actually see him scrolling through job boards, typing up applications, or talking about interviews he was considering. Those little moments gave me a flicker of hope, like maybe he had finally realized how serious this situation was. But just as quickly as the hope appeared, it disappeared the very next day. It was like the conversation had never even happened. I'd come home from work, and there he'd be again, controller in hand, eyes glued to the screen, completely lost in his games. No progress, no urgency. Just the same cycle all over again. It felt like a cruel pattern. I'd bring it up. He'd make promises. He'd put in a tiny bit of effort, and then slide right back into his comfort zone. And each time this happened, it hurt a little more because I realized his promises weren't real solutions. They were just words to calm me down, to buy himself more time, to avoid responsibility for one more day. I started to resent those empty promises more than his gaming. At least with the gaming, I could see what he was doing. But the promises, they gave me hope, only to crush it. They made me believe, for a short moment, that he cared enough to change when in reality, nothing ever changed. And over time, I began to wonder if he was promising change for me or just to keep me from finally walking away. That's when it really hit me. I didn't feel like I was living with a partner anymore. I felt like I was living with a roommate, and not even a normal roommate, one who didn't pay rent, didn't help with chores, didn't contribute in any meaningful way. The difference was, I hadn't signed up for a roommate. I had signed up for a partner, someone I could build a life with. Every day, the weight on my shoulders grew heavier. I was working full-time, paying every single bill, making sure groceries were in the fridge, and keeping the apartment running, while he sat comfortably without lifting a finger. The longer it went on, the more I felt like I was being taken advantage of. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the imbalance, about the fact that I was giving so much, and he was giving back almost nothing. And then came the worst realization of all. I felt used. That's not an easy thing to admit about someone you love, but it's the truth. It was as if my role in the relationship had shifted from girlfriend to provider. I wasn't his equal anymore. I was his safety net. his free ride. I wanted so badly for us to be a team. I pictured a relationship where we supported each other, where we celebrated wins and carried the tough times together. I imagined us pushing each other to grow, to achieve more, to become better versions of ourselves. That's what I thought partnership meant. But instead, what I got was the opposite. Instead of being lifted up, I was being dragged down. Instead of sharing responsibilities, I was carrying them all on my own. And the sad truth was, he didn't even seem to notice the toll it was taking on me. The more I thought about it, the more I realized love isn't supposed to feel like being used. There's only so much weight one person can carry before it all becomes too heavy. And I had finally reached that point. For weeks, I had bottled up the frustration, telling myself to be patient, to be understanding, to keep giving him more time. I wanted to believe he would change on his own, that he would eventually snap out of his comfort zone and step up for us. But the reality was that nothing changed. And with each passing day, the resentment inside me grew stronger. I'd come home after long shifts, my body tired and my mind overwhelmed with the stress of bills piling up, only to find him exactly where I left him, sitting on the couch, controller in hand, lost in his own world. It was like my struggles didn't even exist to him. And the worst part, he didn't even seem to notice how much it hurt me. One night, I couldn't hold it in anymore. The anger and exhaustion spilled out of me in words I had been scared to say. Either you start taking your job search seriously, or I'm done. I can't live like this anymore. My voice shook as I said it. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid of his reaction. I was afraid of what would happen to me if I kept living this way. I expected him to brush it off, to make another excuse, or promise he wouldn't keep. But instead, something shifted in his eyes. For the first time, it seemed like he realized I wasn't bluffing. He looked at me differently, like he finally understood that I wasn't going to carry him forever. That moment was terrifying and liberating at the same time. Terrifying because I didn't know what would come next, but liberating because I had finally stood up for myself. It was the first time I truly demanded more than empty words. And that's when something finally shifted in him. It was as if my ultimatum had flipped a switch he didn't even realize existed. For the first time in months, he actually listened. He didn't argue. He didn't roll his eyes. He didn't make another half-hearted promise that I knew he wouldn't keep. Instead, he put the controller down, really down, and for once, it stayed there. I watched in cautious disbelief as he opened his laptop, not to scroll through endless videos or chat with his friends, but to actually search for jobs. He started applying like his future depended on it. And maybe, in a way, it did, because for the first time, he seemed to understand that my patience wasn't infinite, that if he didn't step up, he was going to lose me. Little by little, things began to change. He would wake up earlier, sit at the kitchen table with his coffee, and type away at applications while I got ready for work. He started going to interviews, ironing his shirt, practicing answers, asking for my opinion, and eventually, it paid off. He found a job. At first, it was just part-time, but even that felt like progress, like maybe he was finally on the right track. Soon after, he moved into full-time work, and slowly, almost cautiously, he began contributing to our bills. For the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel like I was drowning completely on my own. From the outside, it probably looked like a happy ending. If friends or family had peeked into our lives, they might have thought things were finally turning round for us, that we had weathered the storm and come out stronger. I even caught myself smiling sometimes, almost daring to believe it too. But deep inside, the cracks were still there, because while he might have changed on the surface, I couldn't forget how long it had taken him, and I couldn't erase the memory of those months when I carried everything alone. On the outside, things finally looked like they were falling into place. He had a job, he was contributing, and for the first time in months, I wasn't suffocating under the weight of every single responsibility. to anyone else, that would have seemed like the happy ending. But what no one could see was the storm that still raged inside me. Because the truth was, even though he eventually stepped up, the damage had already been done. I couldn't erase the memories that haunted me, memories of coming home exhausted from work only to see him glued to his games, while bills sat unpaid on the counter. I couldn't forget the countless nights I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how much longer I could keep carrying the both of us. Every time I looked at him, a part of me still saw the man who had let me drown in silence. The man who watched me break my back to hold everything together while he escaped into a fantasy world. His effort now didn't erase those months of neglect. It didn't undo the loneliness, the resentment, the disappointment that had already carved themselves deep into my heart. And that's the part no one tells you about, how even when the problem is fixed, sometimes the hurt lingers. It's like a scar you carry, invisible to everyone else, but impossible for you to ignore. Yes, he was finally trying. Yes, he was finally doing what he should have done from the very beginning. But to me, it didn't feel like enough, because if he truly cared, why didn't he act sooner? Why did it take me threatening to leave before he finally moved? That question stayed with me, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake it. His progress may have convinced others that everything was fine, but inside, I knew things were far from healed, and that's the truth I couldn't escape. No matter how hard I tried, the disappointment never left me. It clung to me like a shadow, following me through every conversation, every moment we shared afterward, even when he finally began contributing to the bills, even when he started pulling some of his weight. It didn't erase what had already happened. I couldn't unsee the version of him who had crumbled the moment life demanded responsibility, because that version of him, the man who quit his job without a thought, who left me drowning in stress while he escaped into video games, still lived in my memory. No amount of paychecks or I'm trying now moments could undo the months where I felt utterly alone in my own relationship. Every time I looked at him, I couldn't help but remember how quickly he abandoned me emotionally when I needed him most, and that memory was louder than any of his efforts now. It wasn't just about the money, it was about trust. It was about knowing whether I could depend on him when life got messy again. Because deep down, I already had my answer. He had shown me that when things got hard, his first instinct was to give up, and that truth stung more than the financial burden ever did. I started realizing that even if he worked, even if he tried, I couldn't fully respect him anymore. I couldn't erase the resentment that had built up inside me. The bitterness of feeling like I had been used. I felt abandoned, not physically, but emotionally. He was there in the same house, but when it mattered most, he wasn't really with me. And the hardest part was knowing that nothing could undo that. No apology, no job, no paycheck could rewind time and make me feel supported during the months I carried everything alone. That disappointment had settled deep into my heart, and I wasn't sure if it would ever leave. From the outside looking in, people think I should be grateful. They see him finally working, finally earning, finally contributing, and they assume everything must be better now. Some even say things like, at least he got a job, right? At least he's helping a little. To them, that's enough to fix everything. But what they don't understand is that this isn't about the job. It's about everything that came before it. Because when I look at him working now, I don't feel proud. I don't feel relieved. What I feel is this strange hollowness, like something inside me broke a long time ago and no amount of money or effort can repair it. And deep down, I know why. He didn't suddenly wake up one morning and decide to step up because he loved me or cared about what I was going through. He didn't change because he finally saw how much I was struggling and wanted to be my partner again. No. He only moved when I gave him an ultimatum, when I told him that if he didn't take his life seriously, why I would leave. It wasn't love that motivated him, it was fear. Fear of losing his comfort. fear of losing the roof over his head, fear of losing his free ride. That's what pushed him into action. And that truth weighs heavily on me. Because in a real partnership, effort should come from love, from respect, from the genuine desire to build a life together, side by side, not from the fear of losing what you've been taking for granted. So no matter how hard I try, gratitude isn't what I feel when I see him working now. Instead, I feel manipulated, like he only did just enough to keep me from walking away. And that's why, no matter how much things look better on the surface, I can't ignore the cracks that still run deep underneath. Here's the part that hurts the most. What I wanted from him was never unreasonable. I didn't ask him to move mountains. I didn't demand perfection. I didn't expect him to suddenly have life all figured out. All I ever asked for was effort, just effort, a genuine sign that he cared enough to stand beside me and face life's responsibilities as my partner, not as another burden I had to carry. I wanted someone who didn't need to be pushed or threatened to do the bare minimum, someone who had enough motivation, enough pride in himself to take charge of his own life. I dreamed of a relationship where we could build each other up, where we could share the weight of life together, instead of me dragging all of it while he sat in his comfort zone. That's not asking for too much. That's the foundation of what a partnership should be. But instead of that, what I got was a man who drained me in every possible way. Financially, he leaned on me until my bank account was stretched thin. Emotionally, he left me exhausted with disappointment after disappointment. Mentally, I felt like I was carrying the stress of two people while he escaped into his games and his distractions. Slowly, without even realizing it at first, I stopped feeling like I was in a relationship. What I felt instead was that I had taken on another dependent, someone who couldn't or wouldn't stand on his own 2 feet. And then came the moment that shattered me completely, the realization that I wasn't building a future with him at all. I wasn't with a partner who wanted to grow alongside me. I was babysitting a man who only chose responsibility when it benefited him, not because he cared about me or us. That truth hit me like a brick, and once I saw it clearly, I couldn't unsee it. Something deep inside me broke that day, and it hasn't healed since. Now, every time I look at him, something inside me feels different. It's like my eyes no longer see the man I once fell in love with, the man I thought I could build a future with, the one I believed would stand beside me through anything. That version of him feels like a memory, almost like a dream I once had, but not the reality I live in now. Instead, what I see is a man who sat back while I carried the weight of everything on my shoulders. I see the hours he spent glued to his games while I sat in silence, tears slipping down my face, feeling invisible in my own home. I see the nights I lay awake worrying about bills, food, and rent, while he slept peacefully without a single thought about the responsibilities that kept me awake. Those images replay in my mind like scars that refuse to heal. And because of all that, the love I once felt for him has withered. It hasn't vanished all at once. It's been slowly drained, piece by piece, with every disappointment, every broken promise, every moment where he chose his own comfort over us. What I feel now isn't love, it's frustration, it's resentment, and more than anything, it's exhaustion. I'm tired of begging for the bare minimum, tired of convincing myself that things will get better when deep down, I know they won't. Tired of carrying a relationship that feels one-sided, like I'm constantly pouring myself into something that gives nothing back. That kind of exhaustion doesn't just wear on the body, it eats away at the heart. And maybe that's the hardest truth I've had to face, that love doesn't always fade because of one big fight, one betrayal, or one explosive moment. Sometimes it dies quietly, chipped away by 1,000 small disappointments, until one day you wake up and realize there's nothing left to hold on to. That's where I am now, standing in a relationship where love once lived, but no longer survives. And now, here's where I stand. I know exactly what I need to do, even though the very thought of it twists my stomach. and makes my chest ache. I need to move on. I need to stop holding on to the illusion of who I believed he could be and start facing the reality of who he actually is. Because no matter how many bills he contributes to now, no matter how many times he promises he's trying, I will always remember the truth that when I needed him the most, he let me drown without a second thought. That kind of disappointment doesn't fade away with time. It doesn't just vanish once circumstances improve. Instead, it lingers in the background, always reminding me of how alone I truly was when things got hard. It festers, growing deeper the more I think about how easily he left me to struggle while he escaped into his own comfort, and that lingering hurt has permanently changed how I see him. I don't see a partner anymore. I don't see someone I can rely on, someone I can build a future with. What I see instead is a person who forced me into the role of caretaker, while he took the role of dependent. He wasn't my equal, he was my burden. And even now, as he tries to act like he's stepping up, I can't shake the memory of who he chose to be when it truly mattered. So yes, walking away hurts. It hurts to look at the pieces of what I thought we had and admit they'll never fit together again. It hurts to let go of the love I once poured so freely into this relationship. But staying hurts more. Staying means silencing myself, burying my resentment, and pretending trust can exist where it has already been broken. And as painful as it is, I know there's only one path forward for me. The only way I can protect my heart, my peace, and my future is to let go, even if it means walking away from everything I once thought we were. The hardest part of all this isn't admitting that I need to leave, it's figuring out how to actually do it. Making the decision in my head feels so much simpler than putting it into practice. Because even though I know this relationship has drained me in every way, I still find myself worrying about him. And that's the part that makes everything so complicated. He doesn't have much money saved. And if he moves out, I know it won't be easy for him. Rent is expensive, bills pile up quickly, and the reality is, he hasn't exactly shown the discipline to manage his life responsibly. A part of me still doesn't want to see him fail, or worse, end up struggling just to survive. Even after everything, I don't want to feel like I've thrown someone I once loved into the deep end without a lifeline. That's where the guilt creeps in and starts whispering to me at night. It makes me wonder if ending things now makes me selfish, cold, or uncaring. Am I abandoning him? Am I heartless for putting myself first? These are the questions that eat away at me. And yet, deep down, I know the truth. It isn't selfish to want peace, because what about me? What about the weight I've carried? The exhaustion I've felt? The endless cycle of hoping for change that never came? Why should my peace, my happiness, and my future always come second to protecting him from the consequences of his own choices? Staying for the sake of his comfort means slowly destroying myself. And that can't be the definition of love. So yes, the responsibility feels heavy. The guilt tries to convince me to stay, but I'm finally realizing that true responsibility isn't about carrying someone else at the cost of losing myself. It's about having the courage to choose what's healthy, even when it's hard. I've caught myself running through scenarios in my head, searching for ways to soften the blow. Maybe I could help him with a security deposit. Maybe I could set aside a little money so he has a cushion to land on. Maybe if I made the transition easier, I wouldn't feel so guilty about letting him go. The caretaker in me still wants to make sure he's okay, even if, truthfully, he hasn't shown me that same level of care or consideration. It's strange how even when I'm the one feeling drained, used, and overlooked, my instinct is still to protect him, to worry about whether he'll survive without me. That instinct feels noble at first, but when I sit with it long enough, I start to question what it really means. Is it compassion, or is it just another way of keeping myself stuck in this cycle? Because the hard reality is this: if I wait until he's financially stable, Will that day ever actually come? Or am I just handing him more time to drag his feet, to avoid responsibility, to let me carry the weight while he sits comfortably in the safety net I built for him? If history has taught me anything, it's that he only steps up when I push him to the edge, and I can't keep being the person who has to push forever. The more I think about it, the more I realize that helping him just a little more might not be an act of kindness, it might be another excuse, another delay, another way to convince myself that I can't leave yet. And if I keep waiting for the perfect moment, the moment when he's finally stable enough to be on his own, I might be waiting for a day that never comes. The temptation to save him feels powerful, but saving him can't come at the cost of saving myself. When I finally stop spinning in circles and overthinking every possible outcome, the facts become painfully clear. This is my apartment. I signed the lease. I worked hard to make this space into a home long before he ever showed up. Every piece of furniture, every bill paid, every late night spent hustling it all came from me. He's only been here for 7 months, and yet somehow I've let him take up so much more than just physical space. He's occupied my energy, my emotions, and my peace of mind. And now, when I look around these walls, it doesn't even feel like the sanctuary I created anymore. It feels like I've been living in a place that doesn't belong fully to me. But the truth is, it does. This foundation and it's mine. And when I really sit with that fact, I realize how much I've sacrificed to carry him. How much of myself I've poured into making sure he's comfortable while I've been quietly crumbling. Staying isn't saving him, it's sinking me. Every extra month I give him here is another month of me sacrificing my own well-being for someone who hasn't shown me he's willing to sacrifice anything for me. That's the bitter reality I can't ignore anymore. If I keep going like this, the only person who truly loses is me. Because I'll lose more than just money or energy. I'll lose myself, my sense of independence, my peace, my pride in the life I built before he came along. I can't afford to let that slip away. Choosing myself first isn't about cruelty, and it isn't about abandoning him. It's about finally recognizing that my needs matter, too, that I've done more than enough, that this home I built is still mine, and I have the right to protect it and myself from being drained any further. So here I am, circling the same thought every single night. How do you leave someone who depends on you, even when you know staying is only hurting you more? It's a question that doesn't come with an easy answer. On one side, there's the love I once felt, the memories of what I thought we could be, and the guilt of knowing that if I walk away, he'll struggle. On the other side, there's me, the woman who's been carrying this relationship alone, the woman who's been drained, silenced, and diminished in order to keep someone else afloat. This is the kind of choice that twists your heart into knots, because it's not just about logic, it's about emotions, guilt, and survival all tangled together. When you care about someone, even someone who has hurt you, it feels unnatural to imagine leaving them behind. A part of me wants to keep fixing, keep giving, keep saving. But the harsher truth is that staying has cost me too much already. My happiness, my energy, my hope, they've all been chipped away piece by piece while he stayed comfortable, knowing I would hold everything together for the both of us. And that's the part I can't ignore anymore. He may depend on me, but I can't depend on him. I've been living half a life, shrinking myself down, convincing myself that things would get better if I just waited a little longer. But the waiting never ends, and in the meantime, I've been losing myself. So maybe the bravest thing I can do is finally put myself first, to accept that his journey is not mine to carry, to accept that letting him figure the rest out on his own isn't cruelty, it's the only way forward. Because if I keep sacrificing myself for someone who won't meet me halfway, then I'm not saving either of us. I'm just drowning us both. And I deserve more than that.